In this video, we want to take a look at how we can add contrast to the iris. Depending upon the photo would ultimately dictate how you would approach this. I want to show you two different things that you can do. The first thing that you may want to do is add contrast, and that, believe it or not, is simple. All you need to do is duplicate the background layer. After duplicating the background layer, you want to change the blend mode, and you want to use a blend mode that creates a lot of contrast, so something like overlay. Now, obviously, we're adding this effect to the entire image, and we just want to isolate it to the eyes. So what we're going to do is create a layer mask. Hold down the Option key on the Mac, Alt on Windows while doing that. It's going to fill that mask with black. Then you can choose white as your foreground color. You can then select a brush. B is the keyboard shortcut. And you're just going to come into the eye and paint white to reveal those pixels that have more contrast. And so quickly and easily, you're able to create an image where the subject has more contrast in their eyes. So let's go ahead and take a look at the before and the after. So that does make a pretty big difference. Go ahead and zoom out so you have a better idea as to what that looks like. The other thing that you may want to do in this case, I don't think the contrast is all that bad. In fact, this almost looks a little freaky. And if it does, remember, you can always dial the effect back by dragging the opacity slider. So somewhere around the 50% range actually does make the portrait look a little bit nicer. But something else that I want to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and just trash this layer that we just worked on. And something that oftentimes can work a lot better is to create more of a dark edge around the iris. And again, that's pretty easy as well. Let's come over and choose the elliptical marquee tool. With the elliptical marquee tool, you want to create a selection of the eye. Remember, you can always hold down the space bar while dragging out the selection to move the selection. And once you're happy with it, you can let go of the mouse and your selection will be created. I actually don't want to go too far here. I'll hold down the space bar and move it up a little bit, drag it back down. I think that looks good. So here we have the selection. What we want to do before anything is feather the selection. So let's come up to the Select menu, and from the Select menu, you can choose Modify, then you can select Feather. And we want to add about 5 pixels of feather radius here. Go ahead and click OK. Then move these pixels onto their own layer. Command-J or Control-J is the keyboard shortcut to do that. We now have a layer with nothing but an eyeball on it. And in this case, what we want to do is come down here and choose something like Multiply to darken those pixels. After doing that, clearly this doesn't look very good, but we're getting the darker edge that we want. We just want to remove all the other information. So we can load that previous selection by holding down the Command key on the Mac, Control on Windows, and clicking on the layer thumbnail. Now this is the selection. We want this selection, we just want it to be a little bit smaller. So we can come up to the Select menu, and from the Select menu, we can choose Modify, and then we can select Contract. And we're going to contract this by about 5 pixels or so. Go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, you'll notice that the selection is a little bit smaller. Just press the Delete or Backspace key on your keyboard, and that's all there is to it. Go ahead and deselect that, Command-D or Control-D. We definitely have that dark edge now. Clearly, it's going over here into the eyelid, so that's not good. So let's go ahead and add a layer mask and paint some black. So make sure that black is the foreground color. Right now, it's the background color. I can press the X key to swap those colors. Then select the brush tool. B is the keyboard shortcut, any brush size that you want, and just paint black in those areas where you don't want to see that darker ring. So now, if we zoom out, this really does make quite a big difference when looking at the portrait. And that's really a nice effect to have when working with eyes. Clearly, you're going to want to do that exact same thing over here on the left-hand side. Certainly, you could copy this and maybe mask it out a little bit differently because of the angle that she's looking at the camera. But if you're going to do it to one eye, you definitely should do it to the other eye. But nevertheless, that's the technique, and it's something that you probably want to do if the subject doesn't have this. A lot of times they will have this naturally depending upon the lighting situations, but if they don't, it's pretty easy to add.